Neo The World Ends With You is such an underrated anime game. It's shocking how this game does not get a lot of credit for how good it is. So in this video, we'll be diving into why this game isn't as talked about as a lot and what makes this game so good. So Neo The World Ends With You was released on July 27, 2021 as it was developed by Square Enix and Hand, as it is the sequel to the 2007 classic The World Ends With You. The original The World Ends With You was considered a cult classic, as for one, it came out on the Nintendo DS, and for the fact that it had a different art style. It was a lot more different than all other games you would see on the Nintendo DS. Now you may be wondering, okay, if the original was a cult classic in the 2000s, why is the newer version that was released not that long ago not as good? Well, let me tell you why. Let's start off with the timing and the marketing. The original The World Ends With You, like I said, it was released on the DS in the 2000s. The one that was released now, Neo The World Ends With You, was released in 2021. During that time frame, consoles got better and games got better, which meant that Neo The World Ends With You can't be compared as the games that we have now. If you look at the games we have now as compared to the Neo The World Ends With You, you can't really compare games. Like if you look at games like Elden Ring or Helldivers, or games like those with really good graphics, really good story, and then you look at Neo The World Ends With You, it's like, which game would you rather play? Would you rather play a game with high amounts of graphics, or would you play a game that's simple like this that looks like that would be on Nintendo DS? No, you wouldn't. You would play games like Elden Ring. That's the reason for why Neo The World Ends With You is such an underrated game. There's not a lot of time about, because it's the marketing, which is bad, and the timing was honestly awful. This next reason plays a part into the first reason that I said, and that's the fact that there's the difference in consoles. When the original The World Ends With You was released on the DS, it was a lot more memorable, and it kind of had like a different feeling to what the games that was released on the DS. It was just different. It was more like compatible. It was more like recognizable, as compared to Neo The World Ends With You was released on PC, PlayStation, and the Switch. While yes, it may look better, it just didn't have that same feel. It didn't have that same like kind of grit, if you know what I mean. And that's something that kind of like threw players off. Is yeah, the game may look good, it just didn't have that same feel as the original The World Ends With You. And that's something that can throw off like a player's kind of like mood or something. Another reason could be that the original The World Ends With You, it was a lot more nostalgic. And while Neo The World Ends With You is just as good in its own right and is a little bit more kind of better, it still didn't have that same cult-like feeling or that cult status as the original did. And that's something that can also throw fans off, because of the fact that like you're feeling the nostalgia of one game, and then when they release a sequel of a game, you don't feel that same nostalgia. This next thing I found out was actually a complete shocker to me, because I didn't even notice, but it's the fact that the original The World Ends With You actually had a manga that was out. And I believe something like that can push it out in terms of marketing. Something from what I know, or some things that I've researched, the Neo The World Ends With You didn't have a manga, at least from what I know. I could be wrong, as compared to the original The World Ends With You, it had a manga. And so that kind of plays a part into why Neo The World Ends With You is not as good, because its marketable value, it's just not as good, and it's not like a better as compared to Neo. I'm sorry, not Neo. The World Ends With You, the original The World Ends With You. During that time, we had things like Adult Swim, maybe like Samurai Champloo, like those type anime stuff. Having that like kind of feeling in that manga there kind of boosted its sales a lot. Something I feel like could have been like a major reason as to why the game like not necessarily fell off, but why it's not as talked about, is the fact that, for one, it was like cultural stuff, because from what I've read, it was a huge success in Japan, and then Neo The World Ends With You, while iffy, is not as good, could be the fact that the fans' expectations were not as met. Keep in mind, Neo The World Ends With You is a great game. I've personally played it, and what I can say, I've enjoyed it. It was one of the very few anime games I've enjoyed. But I think for the fact that the fans kind of had like really high expectations, simply for the fact that the original was just as good and it had a cult classic, cult status feeling, it kind of like it was kind of iffy and it kind of like threw people off because like you have a original really good game here, and in the sequel to it, you're having a high expectation like, oh yes, we're having a sequel. It might be just as good as the first game. When you play it and it doesn't meet your expectations, you're like, I guess. I mean, like you know what I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it kind of just leaves like a bitter taste in your mouth. It's not as good as like, like the original. While there are a lot of things that cause the game to not be as talked about, there are a lot of things to me personally, and kind of to a lot of things to other fans that I believe make this game what is good it is now. Just because it's not as popular as the first game, there are some really good elements about Neo the World Ends With You. Firstly, the art style. Oh my goodness, the art style is so good. The characters, the cutscenes, and just the cover art. Oh my god, the thing just looks immaculate and amazing. I've probably never seen really good artwork like that in who knows how long. The fact is like it had like it's bold and it's very eye-catching, and that's coming from an artist myself. The art style is just phenomenal. Another thing is the soundtrack. Oh my god, y'all. That soundtrack for Neo the World Ends With You is probably one of the most catchiest and satisfying soundtracks I've heard. Especially when you open up the game, you just see all the characters like going. I highly recommend y'all checking out the soundtrack, especially Wander Around Shibuya, because that opening song, oh my goodness, y'all. That is probably like one of the best opening songs I have heard ever. It's so good. The music is so good. Another thing is the fact that I really like the story and kind of like the overall characters. Like they're a little bit goofy. It's like Rindo's like serious. Then you have Fret, I believe that's what his name is. He's kind of like the goofy type character, the chill type character. There's like Z, keep saying zeptograms and all that. Even though I've never finished the story, I really love the characters and like how they just interact with each other, and that's something that really like pulled me in and kind of made me continue playing. Is like a really good story, and then the characters are really memorable. Another thing I will say, the voice acting is so good. Whoever did the voices for each of the characters, they did phenomenal in both the Japanese and the English version. The English version, I believe they killed it. I will say that the voice acting, oh my god, probably like some really good voice acting. So I will give credit to those voice actors. They did really good. This is something I personally believe, but I personally believe that Neo the World Ends With You has a lot of replayability. Now this is like saying much coming from a lot of anime games that we got now, but I feel like Neo the World Ends With You is one of those select few games where even if you're done, you can still come back and play to it over and over and over again. And that's something that I love and that I wish to see more out of games like these. The fact that you can finish everything and still be able to play the game again and have fun with it. This is something I would like to see more out of these games. I can go on and on about how good Neo the World Ends With You is. I'll let you guys decide on if you guys want to play it. And let me know in the comments below, do you personally believe that Neo the World Ends With You can resurface and become a really good game? And while you're down there, go check out this video that's on the screen. These game rants are huge and fun to make.